So we work on all types of design, as I said. It's not just about service design or user experience. I see myself in a world that's more in that sort of, service design space, but policy space as well. But I love working on the nitty-gritty of the interfaces too, because really when it comes down to it, we're trying to improve usability and behaviour change. So even though I work on big system design, it's really nice to think about the graphic design, the user experience design within that as well. And way back when I was working in Bombardier, and we used to use the sort of Formula One as a way to say, well, engineering doesn't have to be so constrained because you're working within constraints, but you have to be creative in the technology within that. And Rachel spoke last time about the work that we did with the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, and it was really about how do we actually design within the constraints of the regulations. And not only that, but how do we design within the constraints of their current digital infrastructure as well. I actually didn't think that I could learn any more about AI and AI tools, so that was good to just get a lowdown of what's out there. My presentation is slightly different. If anyone knows me, you'll know that I speak a lot about the work that we do in Big Motive, the work that I do particularly in healthcare, some of the tools that we use and approaches and processes. And I was kind of reflecting before Christmas on working with an amazing team of designers as an engineer. So I thought it would be kind of lighthearted, a wee bit funny maybe, just to think about the things that I have learnt through working with amazing designers and design teams at Big Motive. So if anyone doesn't know me, I'm design partner at Big Motive with Damien Cranny and Stephen Shaw as the three sort of partners in there. I've been with the team over 7 years now, so sort of found myself coming into a team of co-founders and really sort of trying to grow the business and bring a wee bit more of that sort of strategic and service and policy design thinking into the team as well. So my background is aeronautical engineering, so studied aeronautical engineering at Queen's, and then went, as everyone or most people do, into shorts for 5 years and worked in Bombardier Aerospace. So my first kind of experience in design is really system design, fuel systems, lightning strike analysis. And I was really fortunate to get the opportunity to work across multiple sites on future aircraft design as well. So really loved that sort of innovation space, being maybe a wee bit more creative, but also still quite constrained in that sort of engineering way of thinking as well. So my first experience in more of sort of digital design was actually with Gareth, who is presenting next, who did the training on UX design, and I was part of one of your courses, and I thought this is interesting because I feel like that is the way that I work, but it's just a slightly different outcome. So instead of an aircraft part, we're thinking about a digital product or service. So it was a wee bit of a awakening really into where I kind of went, and I also just loved the thought of working in healthcare because of the complexity of it, and I think that we need probably more system thinkers and engineers in our healthcare service to try to improve the systems that we work within as well. So that's a wee bit of my route into Big Motive. Does everyone know Big Motive here? Kind of, most people. I know Rachel spoke at the last Belfast Design, which is great. So we've actually had a wee bit of a rebrand, if anyone has noticed. Basically what we found is that you should not, as a design company, rebrand yourself at all. You should really leave that to other people because it's so difficult to try to think of yourselves another way. But as we know, design is constantly evolving, and so is the design world, so we need to really evolve as well in that. So we kind of see ourselves more as a strategy and design company, not just service design, not just user experience design, kind of leveling up in this world of bigger ecosystems and bigger sort of services that are being created. And I suppose a lot of the work that we do is really around social good. Like, I think that a lot of people come to our team because we do so much work in social care, in healthcare, and we engage with users and citizens quite a lot in that. So we're talking about, testing with citizens, even though we use a lot of this great technology, it really comes down with being out in the communities, being in the hospitals, being out in the world to really understand how people are using those products and services. And we really sit in about 3 sort of spaces, big spaces at the minute around, resilience, healthcare, education. But we also do this random thing for Adidas as well, so which kind of sits alone, and it's really great. The guys are back and forth from Portland in Oregon, working with that team on a wee bit more of an e-commerce project as well. We're about 23 people now, so we're probably one of the bigger independent design agencies on the island. So we are growing and have great ambitions for 2026, which scares me a wee bit, but it will also be really good. So we work on all types of design, as I said. It's not just about service design or user experience. I see myself in a world that's more in that sort of, service design space, but policy space as well. But I love working on the nitty gritty of the interfaces too, because really when it comes down to it, we're trying to improve usability and behaviour change. So even though I work on big system design, it's really nice to think about the graphic design, the user experience design within that as well. So my 5 learnings over the last number of years. Gareth will be talking about 30 years in the digital space. I'm about 15 or 16, Gareth, so we bit behind. But these are not universal truths. So there are engineers in the room, aren't there? Few? Designers? Mostly? Okay. So you'll see some of these, you'll probably nod your heads and you'll probably think, yeah, I definitely have experienced that. And you might think that some of this is stereotypical, which I apologise for as well. But walked into Big Motive for the first sort of couple of weeks and was super interested in what everyone was working at on their screens. Like, what are you doing? It's like, it's not finished yet. Don't look. And I was like, that's weird, because I actually love looking over people's shoulders. I love seeing what people are doing. And in the engineering world, that working out, the calculations, the flow diagrams, the models, the stress analysis, like that was the impressive bit to me. Just love maths, really, It's like, that's the exciting bit. But for designers, it felt like vulnerability, a bit fragile at the start. Early ideas were sort of not half-finished solutions. They're just like half-informed or formed thoughts. So this is actually JP in our office working, and I just couldn't understand it at the start, And I think actually when COVID hit, it felt a wee bit nicer for designers because they could protect their designs at home a bit more. But then we lost the ability to catch something early on that mightn't be quite right as well. So you need a wee bit of both in the world. But to me, I really love that messy middle bit where you have kind of more chance to change things as well. So anyone kind of think this way? Any designers that are like, oh, don't look yet? Just a couple. I actually don't think you're being honest about that. I think everyone does it, really, in some way. So second thing is, and everyone tells me this in the office, I am so black and white about things. Designers live in the grey, so they live in ambiguity. I'm very much like, it's the right thing or the wrong thing. And it took me a while to kind of figure out how I fit into that grey part of it. The sketching, they're like trained to sort of think about that uncertainty. And actually that's what makes it really good to interface with the clients for me, because clients don't like ambiguity either. They want to get to the solution. They want to know what the thing is that you're building. And for the designers, they're going, but it's a process, we have to go through. And to be honest, unless you kind of stop that process, sometimes you would just tinker with things forever, without actually getting to the final thing. So understanding that it isn't comfortable sometimes for clients who do not have that design background, who don't really understand why you have to sketch things or why you have to wireframe things or why you want to test early and things like that, is quite hard. So really, I feel like I'm a better person when we are a bit later in the process, when I can sort of get through to, right guys, you've tinkered enough, it's time for delivery. Like, what are we actually doing here? Which is kind of that engineering brain of just going, right, it's not creative anymore. It's about deploying something, and what does that mean as well. And I really like regulations and rules and constraints. And I know a lot of designers do too, but there's a lot of designers that don't. And we had a great conversation at our Christmas party about all the vibe coding and artificial intelligence tools that we use. And I was in the, how do we test that? How do we know it's not an hallucination? What data are you putting into that? Is there patient data? Do you take that out? Do you anonymize that? So I'm like, we need to do an audit on those tools, and everyone's like, oh, Rebecca, seriously, they're all really valuable tools. And I'm going, well, you don't really need User Brain and Maze and Dovetail and Figma Make and Framer, and they're like, but they do all different things. They're all different parts of the design process. Whereas to me, I kind of like the guardrails and the constraints, and it's actually lovely what you can do in those constraints. And way back when I was working in Bombardier, and we used to use the sort of Formula One as a way to say, well, engineering doesn't have to be so constrained because you're working within constraints, but you have to be creative in the technology within that. And Rachel spoke last time about the work that we did with the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office. And it was really about how do we actually design within the constraints of the regulations. And not only that, but how do we design within the constraints of their current digital infrastructure as well. So the team had to be so creative about what the design could be. And also we were designing for a design audience within government constraints and regulation constraints. So you had to be bolder, within that as well. So constraints and regulations and rules, same with accessibility rules, there is a way to be creative. And we just won a piece of work actually for a hospital website in the south of Ireland. And I asked them, why did our brief stand out? Why did we win that? And they said, because everyone else came in with a brief and they just had boxes for content. When you landed on the site, it was just boxes of content. And you come in and we had emotion around it, and we had a beautiful iconography, and we had beautiful warm colours. And the big thing about our process was that we can still be accessible, but actually have a really warm design within that as well. So how can you be creative within those constraints too? Feedback. No one likes feedback. Does anyone like feedback? Some people like feedback. I love feedback. I live for feedback. Yeah, feedback is great. So maybe when I started kind of in this world too, my feedback maybe landed slightly differently than I was expecting, as an engineer, giving feedback to designers. And I think because, again, one of the designers said, you're super blunt, Rebecca, but you're really nice about it. And I was like, it's probably about right. Anyone that's worked with me, Tony, you'll know that. Yeah.
It's not quite in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, no. But design work is so deeply personal. You put so much work into it, and every colour is picked for a reason. So even though to me it's it's just a colour, move on, But it kind of took me a while to think about my feedback of just correctness, is it right or wrong, did not really help the design team, because that wasn't giving them this sort of momentum to go forward with something that's a wee bit better. So I suppose it was just a reflection moment for me that design work is about those emotions, and it's not just with the team, it's with the people that we speak to as well. This is me speaking to somebody with a learning disability who we did a massive project with, and talking to them, I was like, well, for them the answer isn't right or wrong. There's so much in between, and there's so much rich insight that you get from that as well. So I'm still probably really blunt, but I try to be better about it as well with the team. And I say this to our clients all the time as well, if anyone is working in the design space, they're working in messiness, they really are the whole way through. And as much as we kind of say, we work through the stages of the design thinking process, it's never really true because we do kind of bounce from solutions to discovery and then back and then prototypes and testing and then back again. And I think sometimes I struggle with that because I'm so used to a very linear way of working, and also that sort of, like I was saying about, it's either right or wrong, so that sort of grey area is really hard sometimes. And sometimes you do have to go back to discovery if you haven't got the right thing. And sometimes you use AI to help. And sometimes you decide that when you put that out into an environment that you haven't got the right feedback from the right people. And sometimes in the live environment, you get more of that feedback, which means you can progress quicker. AI is great for just getting you a bit more right than what you would have been before, but it doesn't get you the whole way. So there's loads of work to do on that as well. So I love process maps. Rick will know this. Love a process map. Love service design because it's a process. And then when you get into sort of the lovely sort of user experience stuff, it kind of feels like a wee bit outside my comfort zone. But I think that I try to simplify everything, so try not to overcomplicate it, think about logic and structure. And then design doesn't always show it's working. So, it's really trusting the judgment that you're doing the right testing and you're putting out the right thing and that you're always improving and always learning from it as well, was a massive thing as well.
Rebecca, is it a case that's as difficult to build for creative or thinking time by an engineer?
Bill for it? Oh, jeez. No, if you're really good at actually selling it to the client, do you know what I mean? Because it's like, that's probably where AI has kind of helped, because you can get through that bit of it a bit quicker, but it doesn't get you to 100%. So you can get to a prototype quicker, but doesn't mean that you've tested it well. You can launch something, maybe vibe code it. Doesn't mean you're meeting all the regulations and rules. Doesn't mean that you don't have to be concerned about ethics or data, standards and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So, I think there's a balance. There's a wee bit of a balance, with the two. So, my presentation was going to be quick. So, final thoughts then on this, and what I have definitely learned is that right now, more than ever, the discipline needs protected. Because technology, we've gone from designers trying to say that technology is not the answer. You need to do the discovery. Please do the design bit first. And I thought we were kind of getting there, where people were going, okay, we do need to do that. And what the new technology has shown is that we're back to technology first again, because we can use technology so much faster. But we've kind of lost the design. Like, engineers will say, well, sure, all the design patterns are there and we can do the WCAG and it's all great, but we lose the emotion and the feeling. And what AI is not good at is sitting in ambiguity. It's the black and white. Like me, it's not the grey. So, and you're only really creative and gaining insights in the grey, to me. So we need to protect that designers are going to be the really good prompters. We need to say that the designers who focus on research are going to get to a better outcome from that as well. So we can't lose that discipline. And also I think that engineers bring a really, really, great value to design teams as well, because it gets you further into what is actually possible as well, and what can be built out too. So that's me. Thank you.